Marcus had only been gone for 2 days. He'd left town on a Friday morning to visit his sister. A quick road trip with no expectation that anything would be different when he returned. The marina had always felt safe. Gated, with card access, cameras, and an HOA office overlooking the slipsit was the last place he expected to find something missing, especially not his boat. Especially not the last laugh. But now, Sunday evening, the air smelled wrong. Too still, too clean. The kind of quiet that didn't belong near open water. The moment Marcus stepped onto the dock, he knew. The slip was empty. The ropes, damp and coiled, were draped over the cleats like someone had just finished tying them. But they weren't tied. They were undone. Sloppy. Not the way Marcus ever left things. His boat wasn't there. He blinked twice, trying to make sense of it, walked up and down the dock, checked every nearby slip just in case it had been towed for some reason. But there were no signs posted, no notice, just absence. As if the boat had never existed. Marcus's footsteps echoed across the dock boards, as he turned and saw Karen Dunley walking toward him, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched unnecessarily on her head. She wore the same stiff smile she always did, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Evening," she said lightly, barely, glancing up. "Everything all right?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He pointed at the slip. "My boat's gone." Karen stopped, tapped her pen against the clipboard. "Gone," she repeated, as if she hadn't heard him correctly. "It was here Friday morning. Now it's not." She squinted toward the water, as if expecting the boat to magically reappear. Could be it was moved for maintenance? Or, maybe someone borrowed it. "Nobody borrows my boat," Marcus said evenly. "And nobody has permission to move it." She gave a slow nod and made a vague note on her clipboard. "Well, I'll check the logbook in the office. See if anyone signed it out." Marcus stared at her. Nobody signed anything. It was stolen. That made her pause. "You think someone stole your boat from this marina?" She said it in a tone that tried to sound concerned but came off more amused. "It's not here. So, unless it sailed itself." "Yeah." Karen smiled again, lips tight. "I'll look into it." With that, she turned and walked away, tapping her pen like the matter was routine. Marcus watched her disappear into the office, but he didn't follow. He already knew he wouldn't find answers there. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The moment he opened the app, his pulse quickened. The GPS tracking dot was moving. Still on water. 42 miles southeast. He zoomed in. The signal was coming from a private canal network outside the city, an exclusive, high-security area. Not somewhere just anyone could enter. His mind raced. It couldn't be a coincidence. Karen had brushed him off too easily, too quickly. The marina logs would go missing. The security cameras would malfunction. He could already hear the excuses. He copied the coordinates, snapped a screenshot of the moving dot, and saved it all to his cloud storage. Then he started the car. He didn't know what he'd find when he got there, but he knew he wasn't waiting. As the engine rumbled to life, Marcus made one more call. Not to the police. They'd be slow, ask for paperwork, and probably do nothing until it was too late. Instead, he dialed his friend Malcolm, a guy who owed him a favor. A guy with a drone and no questions. "You busy tonight?" Marcus asked. "Not if something's flying. I've got coordinates," Marcus said, "and a thief to expose." Malcolm didn't ask for details. He never did. By nightfall, they were parked in an overlook lot just a few hundred feet from the canal where the GPS had last pinged. Trees shielded them from the road. The sky was moonless, perfect for what Malcolm needed. The drone rose quietly into the air, its lights disabled. The feed streamed directly to the tablet in Marcus's lap as they watched the black and white world tilt and glide. The canal neighborhood wasn't ordinary. These weren't simple waterfront homes. They were luxury properties, each with a private dock, trimmed hedges, and automatic gates. The kind of place that didn't welcome uninvited guests. "There," Marcus said suddenly, pointing. Zoom. The drone's camera adjusted. At first, it was hard to tell. The boat had been repainted. A sleek navy blue replaced the familiar white. The name on the stern read Seas Whisper, written in flowing script. But the lines of the hull, the distinct curve of the railing, the worn notch near the bow, those were unmistakable. It was the last laugh. His boat. They hovered silently. On the deck stood 3 figures, 2 men in button-down shirts holding drinks, and between them, Karen Dunley. She looked relaxed, laughing at something one of the men said. She wore sandals and a summer dress, her hair up in a clip. Marcus leaned closer to the screen. Karen walked across the deck like she'd owned it for years. She pointed at something on the console. One of the men nodded, impressed. Marcus noticed a strange metallic box installed near the steering wheel, something that hadn't been there before. "What's that?" he muttered. "Looks like a smuggling compartment," Malcolm said, eyes fixed on the screen. "You said this was your boat." "It is." "Well," Malcolm added, "somebody did a little remodeling." The drone angled lower, close enough to catch the sound of Karen's voice over the soft waves. "And we'll take her out again tomorrow night," she was saying. "Same route. We don't do open water, just the short hauls." One of the men asked something about the others. Karen replied that the HOA handled the paperwork, and no one would ask questions as long as everything looked legal. Marcus's mouth went dry. This wasn't just about theft. Something else was happening. Something organized. Something hidden beneath a polished smile and an HOA clipboard. He hit the record button and let the footage run. 5 minutes, 10. Long enough to capture faces, voices, and boat details. Long enough to prove that this wasn't a misunderstanding. Karen hadn't just stolen a boat sheet, converted it into something else entirely. After a while, the three disappeared into the house. The boat remained, tied neatly to the private dock. Malcolm angled the drone higher and pulled back. "You going to the police with this?" he asked. "I already did. They're not interested." "Then what's the plan?" Marcus stared at the screen, watching his stolen boat gently knock against the dock. "I need more," he said quietly, "something they can't ignore." He opened his contacts and scrolled past the usual names until he found it. A number saved under only 3 letters. JT. He hadn't spoken to him in over a year. The last time they'd talked, it had been about surveillance work on a maritime fraud case out of Galveston. Marcus had helped him spot a fake export ring using boats just like this one. He hit call. It rang twice before a voice answered. "Didn't expect to hear from you?" "I've got something," Marcus said. "Stolen boat, false registration, and someone who thinks their HOA badge makes them untouchable." There was a pause. "You have video, drone footage, faces, audio. Send it," the voice replied. "If it's what you say it is, we'll be in touch." As the call ended, Malcolm landed the drone gently in the back seat. Marcus didn't say much after that. He just stared through the windshield at the dark houses lining the canal, wondering how far someone like Karen was willing to go on, how long she thought she could get away with it. By morning, Marcus had trimmed the drone footage, clipped the cleanest audio, and attached the GPS logs to the email he sent to JT. He double-checked every detail before hitting send. Nothing exaggerated. No assumptions. Just facts. The boats, location, Karen's voice, the men on deck, the mysterious compartment. 2 hours later, he received a brief response. Acknowledged. Sit tight. Don't alert anyone. It wasn't the kind of reply Marcus hoped for, but it was enough to tell him something was happening. He waited the rest of the day, mostly in silence, checking the tracker, refreshing his email, walking loops around his garage. The boat hadn't moved since the drone flight. Karen, it seemed, was confident. Too confident. By late afternoon, he took another chance. He drove to the sheriff's office, determined to at least report the new evidence just in case. This time, he brought printed screenshots, photos of his original hull number, and copies of his boat insurance showing the exact model and serial. He met with a deputy named Hollis, middle-aged, quiet, with tired eyes and a badge that looked like it had been polished 5 minutes ago. Hollis listened carefully, nodded in the right places, even took the papers from Marcus's hand. But then he turned his screen toward Marcus. There, on file, was a copy of a document, a bill of sale for the boat. Not signed by Marcus. Not notarized. It was dated just 3 days ago, coincidentally, the same day Marcus had left town. And the buyer, Karen Dunley. "You're saying this is fake?" Hollis asked. "I'm saying I didn't sign it. I didn't authorize anyone to sell anything. And that's not even my signature." Hollis frowned, but it was the kind of frown that said, "This is above my pay grade." He made a few notes, thanked Marcus, and said someone would be in touch. Marcus didn't wait. He walked directly from the sheriff's office to the HOA clubhouse, which served as both an office and meeting hall for the board. It was open, as always. The receptionist barely glanced up when he stepped inside. Karen was seated behind the glass window, typing away at her laptop. She looked up slowly, blinking as if surprised to see him. Marcus, she said evenly. Any luck finding your boat? He stared at her. You tell me. Karen leaned back in her chair. I did tell you. I bought a boat from a neighbor. He was moving out. Gave me a good deal. You can't even name him. I have the paperwork, she said flatly. It's fake. Karen's smile returned, faint and polished. That's a strong accusation. Marcus stepped closer. You changed the hall number. You stripped the paint. You covered the name. That's theft. Karen didn't flinch. It's a civil matter. If you want to take it to court, be my guest. But until then, I'd suggest you watch your tone. He looked at her, trying to see past the calm mask. There was something in her eyes, now something tight, cautious. She wasn't as confident as she sounded. He turned and left without another word. That night, Marcus parked at the far end of the marina, sitting in silence again. The GPS still hadn't moved. He pulled up the drone footage, watched the moment Karen pointed out the compartment again, replayed the sentence about short hauls and paperwork. He realized something. Karen wasn't working alone. There was no way she'd risk converting a stolen boat unless she was sure no one would interfere, which meant someone was protecting her. Either inside, law enforcement or higher. At 10 past midnight, Marcus's phone buzzed. Unknown number, he answered. A voice on the other end said, "You need to be careful who you confront. We're not all fans of attention." Double quotes, click, no name. No explanation. Marcus sat there for a long time, watching the shadows across the dock, wondering how deep this thing went and what exactly he'd stepped into. The voicemail left Marcus uneasy, but it confirmed what he'd already begun to suspect. Karen wasn't bluffing. She wasn't acting alone. There was someone behind her, or beside her, making sure that boat stayed exactly where it was. But they'd overlooked one thing. Marcus wasn't just some boat owner with a grudge. He knew things about maritime transport, shipping codes, and boat retrofits. Years ago, before his contracting work took off, he'd handled logistics for international vessels' cargo inspections, crossport clearances, hull certifications. He knew what a smuggling retrofit looked like, and Karen's new toy had the signs all over it. He spent the next day quietly gathering more evidence. First, he pulled up archived photos of the last laugh before the theft. He examined every detail. The original railing, the flooring pattern, the chipped compass housing, the distinct scratches on the port side. He marked them and labeled each with time-stamped images. Then, he walked down to the HOA clubhouse again, but not to confront Karen. He just sat nearby with a newspaper and his phone, listening, watching. She passed by twice, speaking to board members. Her tone was clipped now, defensive. Once, she held up a manila folder and whispered something sharply to the vice president. Marcus angled his phone camera, catching a shot of the folder. It had the marina's name on it. She was covering her tracks. Later that evening, he returned to Malcolm's garage. The drone was ready again, and this time, Marcus brought a checklist. "I need overhead shots," he said, "but also thermal imaging. See what's below deck. If they added anything, compartments, panels, heat signatures." Expecting something warm, Malcolm asked, curious if they're running cargo. Marcus replied, "It could be organic or mechanical. Either way, it shouldn't be on a leisure boat." The drone launched just after dusk, quiet as ever. This time, it circled from a higher altitude before dropping low near the stern. The infrared feed pulsed into life, casting a glowing map of heat across the boat's surface. "There," Marcus said, pointing. "What's that?" A section beneath the deck showed a steady warm signature to consistent for normal storage. No movement, but not cold either. Hidden insulation. Possibly climate control. Whatever it was, it had been installed recently. "That's not factory," Malcolm muttered. Marcus nodded. "She's using it to move something. Not just people, not just stolen goods. Something sensitive." He compiled the footage, added side-by-side comparisons to the original layout, and noted the unregistered alterations. Once finished, he sent it all to JT, marking the file urgent. 30 minutes later, he got a reply. "It's actionable. We're sending it forward. Stay out of sight. No contact. We'll handle it from here." Marcus wanted to believe that meant the problem was out of his hands, but something about the way Karen carried herself told him this wasn't over. The next morning, he watched from a distance as Karen arrived at the dock with a clipboard and a pair of designer sunglasses. She greeted a man stepping out of a black SUV, someone Marcus had never seen before. Tall, clean-shaven, In an expensive suit, the man followed her down to the boat. They boarded together. They didn't look like HOA business. Marcus stayed in his truck, zoomed in through binoculars, and noted every movement. Karen pointed out areas on the deck. The man inspected a panel with what looked like a scanner. After 20 minutes, they returned to the car and left in opposite directions. That evening, Marcus found a sealed envelope wedged into his mailbox. No return address. Just his name. Inside was a single photograph. It was a shot of him, sitting in his truck, watching the dock. Taken from behind a fence, clearly up close. He stared at it for a long time. There were no words written on the back, no message, just the image, a quiet warning. He folded it carefully, placed it in a folder marked evidence, and slid it under his mattress. Then he locked every door in his house, checked the GPS app again, and waited for whatever was coming next. The photograph had changed everything. Not because Marcus was afraid, but because it confirmed what he'd sensed all along. He was being watched from that night forward. He changed his routine. No more early walks. No more lights left on. The GPS tracker on his boat remained active, and he checked it obsessively. The dot still hovered in the same canal, tethered to that dock like nothing had happened, but it was the silence that disturbed him. No new word from J.T. No movement from Karen. Nothing except that photograph, burned into the back of his mind. Then, late Wednesday night, Marcus got a call. No number. He let it ring once, twice, then answered without a word. "You were right," came JT's voice. "Compartment's not standard. Registration doesn't match serial records. We ran it through the customs database. Her name came up linked to a previous offshore holding. We're greeting it, meaning, there'll be a visit. Quiet, you're not involved." The line went dead before Marcus could ask anything else. He lowered the phone slowly. A cold feeling crept into his stomach. A visit. Quiet. That didn't sound like paperwork and handcuffs. That sounded like agents. And Karen had no idea. The next morning, she arrived at the dock just past 10, carrying a bag and 2 coffee cups, one for herself, one for the man waiting inside her boat. Not one of the board members. Not anyone from the neighborhood. He wore a gray jacket, stood with his back straight, moved like someone trained to watch more than he spoke. Marcus had seen that posture before in people who didn't carry clipboards or give warnings. They stayed on the boat for 30 minutes, talking, checking the compartments. At one point, the man pulled a wrapped object from beneath the deck and held it up to the light. Then nodded. That afternoon, Marcus received a short message from Malcolm. "They're staging. No action yet. They want her to move it." So that was the game. They didn't want the boat sitting in the dock. They wanted it in motion, caught in the act. And if Marcus had to guess, that next move would be soon. He kept his distance but stayed close enough to watch the weather. No storms on the radar. Calm tides. The kind of night someone like Karen might choose to disappear down the coastline. He waited. At 11:42 p.m. The tracker moved. Marcus watched from the roadside as the boat eased out of the canal, slow and silent. Karen stood at the helm. The man from the morning now wore a hood and stayed low near the rear hatch, but they weren't alone. Barely visible against the shoreline were 3 other boats, small, dark, and unlit. Marcus recognized the shape. Law enforcement. Possibly. Coast Guard. The boats drifted just behind, following at a measured pace, not too close, not too far. He followed from the highway, keeping pace with the GPS ping on his phone. Every mile felt like a countdown. Every curve in the road marked another moment closer. Then the signal stopped moving. Marcus parked in a turnout above a bend in the river. Down below, lights flashed on the water, silent and sudden. 3 black boats closed in at once, engines roaring to life in a coordinated sweep. Floodlights lit up the stolen boat's deck. Voices shouted commands. Karen's arms rose above her head, her voice too faint to make out. The hooded man tried to run. He was pulled down within seconds. Agents climbed aboard from every direction. Hatches were opened. Compartments torn apart. Boxers removed. Marcus didn't get out of his car. He didn't need to. From the hillside, he watched the boat that had once been his get swallowed into the flood of lights, sirens, and steel. It was over. But something inside him still waited, because he knew this wasn't just about a stolen boat anymore. It never was. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat parked on the overlook for hours. Long after the flashing lights disappeared from the river, even when the trackers stopped pinging and the road returned to silence, he stayed still, eyes fixed on the dark current below. There was no satisfaction yet. No release. Something about it felt unfinished. The following morning, news hadn't broken. No headlines. No mention of arrests or seizures. Just silence. Which meant one thing: whatever was happening, it was being buried. By noon, Marcus returned to the marina, not to his slip. He didn't expect his boat back, at least not yet. Instead, he walked the docks slowly, studying the water lines, noting the movement of other boats. The traffic, who came and went. Everything looked the same. But he knew better. Now, at the far end of the dock, Karen's usual spot was empty. Not just the boat, everything. No storage box, no cooler, no folding chair. Not even the familiar white dock line she always used. It was like she had never been there. Still, the HOA office lights were on, so Marcus walked inside. A new voice greeted him, someone young, maybe a volunteer or part-time receptionist. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. "I'm looking for Karen Dunley," Marcus said. The receptionist hesitated. "She's no longer with us." Meaning, she resigned this morning. Sent in an email. "She's no longer on the HOA board." Marcus nodded slowly. "Did she leave a forwarding address?" The receptionist blinked. "We're not allowed to give that out." "Of course." He thanked her and left. The rest of the day passed with an eerie stillness. Karen's house sat dark, no car in the driveway, no movement behind the curtains. The neighbors said little. Most of them were still in the dark. Some just didn't want to get involved. But Marcus had seen too much to pretend now. That night, Malcolm texted him. "Check this out, not from the news." Leaked to a friend in transport. Attached was a still image, a box labeled as equipment parts, unsealed on the deck of Marcus's boat. Inside rows of flat rectangular devices with wiring and ID tags. Marcus didn't recognize them, but the tags were clear. Military-grade GPS interceptors, possibly stolen. Another photo followed. Karen, zip-tied, being led off the boat by two plainclothes agents. Her head was down, her hair loose, no clipboard in sight. The final image showed the man in the hood from the night before. He wasn't struggling anymore, just sitting on the dock, wrists behind his back, a smear of dried blood on his temple. Marcus stared at the photos for a long time. He forwarded them to JT, asking only one question. "Is it over?" The reply came 5 minutes later. "She's not the top. Just a courier, but your info helped open the case. You're out of it now. Let us handle the rest." Out of it. Marcus didn't feel out of it. Not yet. Later that night, as he sat on his porch in the dark, a black SUV rolled by his street. No headlights, just a shadow drifting along the curb. He recognized it. The same vehicle from days before. But this time, it didn't slow, it didn't stop. It just passed and kept going. The next morning, a delivery van pulled into his driveway. Inside was a tarp-covered object on a trailer. The driver checked the invoice, then nodded. "You Marcus Brandt?" "Yes. Got something for you. Says it's impounded property cleared for return." Marcus walked to the back and pulled off the tarp. It was the last laugh. Scratched, stripped of most custom parts, but unmistakably his. Even the compass housing still had the notch on the edge. No compartments, no false panels. Just his boat, beaten but back. The driver handed him a clipboard. "Guess someone decided you earned it." Marcus signed the form without a word. He stared at the boat for a long time, then muttered to himself, "Let's see what else you've been hiding." 2 days after the boat was returned, Marcus still hadn't taken it out on the water. It sat in his driveway, stripped of the sleek finish it once had. Cables hanging loose, panels missing, interior compartments visibly tampered with. Whatever the agents had done, they'd been thorough. He didn't mind. In fact, he appreciated it. They had peeled back every lie Karen had built into it. He spent those 2 days doing the same, stripping back the layers. He filed for a full property review from the HOA, citing negligence. The board was missing half its members now. No one contested his request. At least 3 resignations came in after Karen's quiet removal. No press release, no statement. Just disappearances, one by one. Word was spreading, though, whispers in the neighborhood. Conversations that stopped when Marcus walked by. Some neighbors nodded in quiet solidarity. Others didn't meet his eyes. One even left a note on his mailbox, "Thank you. We were too scared to speak." "You weren't." Marcus tossed it in the drawer with the rest of the documents, photos, GPS logs, screenshots of Karen's bill of sale. He didn't plan to do anything with them, not yet, but it helped to know that when the HOA had tried to shut him up, their own structure had crumbled instead. He spent the third evening scrubbing the deck of the last laugh. Every inch, by hand, removing adhesive residue, cleaning off the grime left behind by careless hands. He found scuff marks under the bench seating, faint traces of something metallic near the helm. The modified panels were gone, but the mounting brackets remained. Just after midnight, his phone buzzed. A single text, unknown number. Turn on channel 8. He walked inside, flipped the TV on. Local news. Quiet anchors with cautious tones. The banner read, Federal agents raid private dock in coastal fraud operation. The anchor began reciting the details. Several arrests. One former HOA official in custody. Federal property seizure. Ties to previous smuggling activity through civilian marinas. No names, no addresses. Just broad strokes. But the footage was clear. Helicopter shots of the same dock Karen had used. Black-suited agents loading crates into unmarked trucks. A woman with a jacket pulled over her head, being led away. Karen. No hiding it now. Marcus watched in silence as the segment played out. There was a short clip of her boat, being winched out of the water. Not the last laugher boat. A second, larger vessel docked behind her house. The one no one had paid attention to. Until now. Marcus turned the TV off before the segment ended. He didn't need more. He went back outside. The wind was picking up, rustling through the trees, stirring the edges of the boat tarp. He stood beside the last laugh, now patched and hollow, its secrets ripped out and discarded. But it was his again. Every inch, every bolt, and no one would take it again. The next day, he installed a new security system, GPS, motion sensors, a full drone perimeter, with real-time alerts. He wasn't just guarding a boat. He was making a point. That evening, while pressure washing the trailer, he heard a voice behind him. Thought you were leaving. He turned. It was Jean Loring, another HOA board member. Old, quiet, always kept to himself, didn't plan to. Marcus replied. Jean nodded. She did. Karen. Jean looked around. She said if the boat didn't move by midnight that night, she was pulling everything and disappearing. Said she had friends in places that don't ask questions. Marcus watched him carefully. You one of them? Jean gave a sad smile. No, I just didn't say anything. None of us did. That's why this all happened. He turned and left. Marcus didn't stop him. Because in that moment, he realized something. This wasn't just about one woman, or one boat. It was about silence. And who dared to break it? 2 weeks passed. No sign of Karen. No new activity from the FBI. The local news still hadn't picked up the story. And the HOA had officially named a temporary president. Quiet, polite, and visibly nervous when Marcus passed him in the grocery store. But Marcus knew better than to assume silence meant safety. He kept a low profile. Took the boat out once, just to test the engine. Everything ran fine. The water was still familiar, but it didn't feel the same. Not after what had happened. The wind sounded sharper. The horizon looked farther. He wasn't just a homeowner anymore. He wasn't even just a victim. He was someone who'd looked behind the curtain and seen what people like Karen could get away with. But it wasn't over. The next clue came not from Karen, or the agents, or the HOA. It came from an insurance adjuster. Marcus had filed a small claim for the repairs, mostly cosmetic. He expected it to be routine, but the call he received wasn't. Mr. Brandt, the adjuster said. I'm reviewing the original policy for the last laugh. Something strange came up. What kind of strange? Well, the ownership log shows a transfer. 6 days before your theft report. Signed digitally. But not from you. From someone claiming to be your estate executor. Marcus stiffened. Alive? He said flatly. I know. That's why I flagged it. He requested the documentation, reviewed it that same night. The signature was clean, but the notary license didn't exist. The mailing address traced to a warehouse in a neighboring county, one that had burned down last year. Marcus printed everything and tacked it to his garage wall. A new puzzle piece. The next morning, a second letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a copy of the insurance record he'd just received only. This version had one difference, a handwritten note scrawled across the top. You think this ends with a boat? No name, no threats, but the message was clear. Karen hadn't disappeared. She had shifted, moved sideways. This wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This wasn't even about smuggling, it was about leverage. The HOA had been a front, just a convenient shield. The real game had always been about control. Karen didn't need the boat. She needed what it could carry, what it could pass, and who it could implicate. Marcus had become a loose thread and someone was trying to pull it tight again. That afternoon, Marcus returned to the clubhouse. Not to talk, just to see who was left. The receptionist had changed again. So had the board roster on the wall. Karen's name was gone, replaced with someone Marcus didn't recognize. The new president gave a weak smile and said the right words. But, as Marcus turned to leave, he caught sight of something on the desk, a stack of parking permits. Freshly printed, each with a barcode, each with a serial number. Nothing unusual, except that one permit had a faded watermark. A marine export company Marcus remembered from years ago. It had been shut down for fraud. A company Karen had referenced once in a casual HOA conversation back when she pretended she didn't know what a keel was. He walked out in silence. At home. He opened a new folder. Not on his computer. Not in the cloud. A locked box under the floorboards, handwritten notes, printed records. Photos, he labeled the folder. Contingency. He didn't know when she'd surface again or in what form, but Karen had underestimated him once. She wouldn't do it again. As the sun went down, Marcus stood at the dock beside his boat. The new name, Unfinished Business, shimmered faintly. In the fading light, he knew there wouldn't be headlines. There wouldn't be justice, not the kind people expected. But there would be a reckoning. And when it came, it wouldn't start in court, it would start here. Quiet, measured, unseen, just like her. Because some wars aren't loud. Some wars don't explode. Some wars start with a stolen boat and end with everything else taken.